I call Matt Ducey.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. It's an honour to rise to support this very important bill, the Environmental Reporting Bill of the second reading. Can I first acknowledge the work of our Environment Minister, the Honourable Dr Nick Smith, for his work in the space of protecting our environment in New Zealand. Also to our Local Government and Environment Select Committee Chair, Scott Simpson, for the dispensing of a very busy Select Committee, but also the previous Select Committee Chair, the Honourable Maggie Barry. Mr Speaker, I wasn't on the Select Committee at the time of the submissions, but reading them through, overall it's time for this environmental reporting system to be implemented. This bill, Mr Speaker, creates a national level environmental reporting system to ensure that reporting on our environment occurs on a regular basis. And this is important, Mr Speaker, so it can be trusted. So the public can trust it as independent, as fair and as accurate information. And why that is important, Mr Speaker, because there are people, parties, organisations that through political motives or financial motives want to bring down our clean and green image of New Zealand. A good example of this, Mr Speaker, is a few years ago the British Green Party decided that they would come up with an approach that our lamb production, growing our lamb in New Zealand and exporting it overseas to the UK, had a bigger carbon footprint than locally produced lamb. And as you would expect in a consumer-driven market in the UK, it led to a drop in New Zealand lamb sales in the UK and drove up locally produced lamb production in the UK. And it wasn't till some bright sparks at Lincoln University got together and used evidence. They used research and science and reported that, in fact, even with the lamb production in New Zealand and the carbon footprint of sending our lamb by plane to the UK, we still had a smaller carbon footprint than British produced meat. And that was because of the intensification of their farming. And this is a good example, Mr Speaker, of why we need this environmental reporting system to provide independent, fair and accurate information to the public so that it will inform and enable informed discussion and debate. This government, Mr Speaker, has a great record on the environmental management, on balancing our environmental responsibilities, plus our economic opportunities to preserve and protect our natural environment. And Mr Speaker, it's amazing that we are the only OECD country that currently does not have an environmental reporting system of this standard. So once again, it takes a national government to bring in this first for this country, very much like the EPA to protect the environment in the petroleum exploration space, as well as our freshwater standards to ensure that our rivers come up to a national standard and any rivers that are below that standard are focused on to ensure we have a national standard of freshwater quality and management. Quite simply, Mr Speaker, you can't manage what you don't measure. And I suppose if I reflect on my career before I got into politics, into healthcare, we use the Hawthorne effect, which basically says when you start measuring something, you focus on it and the performance will naturally increase and improve behind that, the Hawthorne effect. And it's quite right, Mr Speaker, that we can't manage this unless we measure it. And it is right that we start measuring it through this environmental reporting system. And a key part of reporting, data, analysis and interpretation, Mr Speaker, is we have to move past the data quality debate. Because what happens is that every time we have a report, people that for whatever reason just want to attack it will resort to, is the data quality correct? Is the data valid? And having this environmental reporting framework will ensure that. A good example, Mr Speaker, is going to the Salvation Army State of the Nation report this year. And their State of the Nation report demonstrated that child poverty was tracking downwards. They stated that they'd handed out less food parcels than previous years. And the first questions that were asked was, how do we support that continual decline in poverty and food parcels being handed out? No. It was, how can you ensure there is correct data quality? And that's right, Mr. Speaker, that because we'll have this environmental reporting framework, we'll move the discussion and the debate past the data quality stage to look at analysis, interpretation and supporting initiatives that increase, because ultimately, Mr. Speaker, we're all working for the well-being of this country. So, Mr. Speaker, it's good information on the state of the environment that will allow us to fully understand both natural occurrence and the impact human activities are having. And when we dig a bit deeper, Mr. Speaker, and look at the detail of this reporting framework, it's great to see the different domains that will be reported on. There'll be 5 of them. There'll be air, atmosphere and climate, land, freshwater and marine. So each of those domains will be reported on every 6 months, and every 3 years there'll be an integrated report that will inform public and political discussion and debate. It's great to see the insertion of subclauses 6.1a and 9.2, which will require ministers to present reports jointly to the House, so political accountability is encouraged. And I suppose that's a key tenet of this national government, Mr. Speaker, is around accountability. And that is our blue-green movements. We've seen today, Mr. Speaker, with the Greens not supporting this bill, which would probably represent their red-green movement. But for us, it's blue-green. And I know for an electorate like mine, it is very important that we think in this way. Waimak is the 3rd fastest electorate by population growth, but still very much in history is a proud area of primary production. We know, Mr. Speaker, that Waimak is like the rest of New Zealand. When farming's doing well, the whole country does well. Waimak's no different. When farming's doing well, the whole region benefits. And with that, the primary production, there is risks for the environment, Mr. Speaker, and it will be good that this environmental reporting framework will look to ascertain the current data and the findings around that, the risks of nitrate leaching and the risks of water management. And what we need to do, Mr. Speaker, is use reporting like this, use research and innovation to develop and come up with the right solutions to those issues. Because if we come up with the right solutions, not only will it make our land more productive, which means we will export more, which means the well-being of this country will continue to grow, but it means we'll actually have come up with solutions that many other countries are currently wrestling with or will do in the future. And that's great for economic development. I think for me, Mr. Speaker, one of the domains that this reporting framework will focus on is around asthma. A couple of weeks ago, about the domain of air. And I suppose for an asthmatic like myself, 2 weeks ago was World Asthma Day. We know New Zealand has the 2nd highest rate of asthma in the world. 550,000 school days every year are lost because of asthma. 69 deaths in 2011 were contributed to asthma, and 7,000 admissions every year in our public hospitals to do with asthma. So it's great to see a reporting framework like this will be able to tangibly ascertain the pollution in our airways. I suppose growing up in Christchurch, that was synonymous with smog. You'd go out for a run late evening or early evening and you'd wonder whether you were actually doing more damage than going for the run. But through that, we've been able to ascertain by particles in the air that it was things around log burners that we've been able to address and drive through the new technology of ultra-low emission burners. So just to recap, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, you can't manage what you don't measure. And that's exactly right, and this is why we're implementing this legislation. It's great to see that we'll have this legislation. I commend it to the House. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker.
Mika Whaiteri.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, o tira tēnā tātou katoa. Mr